This is one of those long overdue one-on-ones. Matt Van Fossen, CMB, in the house. Happy Monday to you, brother.
Happy Monday to you too, Greg. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you. I'm surprised you're not wearing at least 3 different hats, because you do wear 3 hats at least, really more, but you're the CEO of Absolute Home Mortgage, approaching $3 billion in production after 2 acquisitions, CEO of Mortgage Automation Technologies, the founder of Big Point of Sale. You're also, you do so many things, chair MBA State Legislative and Regulatory Committee on ResBug, MISMO AI Framework. I could go on, but then we'd have no more time. How did we wait this long? And I must say, you, my friend, I went back and I looked at some old pictures. Has anyone ever told you that the old Matt Van Fossen resembles Tom Cruise?
Yeah, we tend to age like fine wine, you know.
I mean, is that a good comp? What do you think? Look at you there, man. Very debonair. You almost look European. You got the stare down.
I remember that picture exists.
When was that picture taken?
Probably 2020, maybe.
I
think that's a pandemic picture when you couldn't get in to go get a headshot in a studio, and I had to take one outside.
Well, you still have your hair. Congratulations on that. I'm losing about 80 pieces a day. It's so good to see you. I really appreciate your time, brother. What got me thinking about getting you on here, more immediately, was this post that you had on LinkedIn from 2 days ago. You know, I'm all over the platform, and when I saw this, I'm like, oh, whoa, okay. All right, Matt's got something to say. Let's go. All right, tell us about this post. What are you trying to say here, and what made you write it?
Well, it goes a lot to the foundation of what I did with my own tech company, and I'm not knocking innovation, right? I'm not knocking AI. I'm not anti-AI, but I do have legitimate concerns about AI's capabilities and what it thinks that we're actually capable of right now versus what it's really capable of. And I'm seeing an influx. I'm seeing an influx of new startups, which is great because, look, I had a startup myself, but making these outlandish claims, that we're automating 100% mortgage, removing the human loan officer from the room, creating, levels of efficiency that we've never heard of before. And, it's just having run the gambit myself, it brings a lot of concern, and I want to shed a light on it, because the way I see that all of this is work is history is repeating itself. And what winds up happening is the lender kind of gets screwed, because for the past 15 years, we've been told one thing: technology will reduce our cost to originate. Yet when we go back and you see the statistics, Greg, you put up those charts yourself. Since 2012, all that's happened is our manufacturing cost has gone up. And yet we have unparalleled technology compared to what we had 14, 15 years ago. So what I'm seeing is lenders come up, or a new vendor comes up with an idea. They go vibe code it. They say, oh, wow, this really, really works. This is great. I bet I can take this to market. And then they go raise some capital. They build, an alpha or a beta product, and they go launch it in the industry and try to, earn their stripes. And all that's going to happen is we, the lenders, get experimented on. We're the ones that say, oh, that's a really cool idea. A lot of us don't know enough to look really deep under the hood. We're potentially creating security and policy violations along the way, because there's no really way to go test these vendors' security. What happens if I hook up one of these startups into my LOS and it's got a treasure trove of 500,000 records into it, and they don't have proper penetration testing, they don't have proper development cadence, and then after we go and beta test these systems for them, what happens? We hand over our intellectual property. We're the test cases. They wind up selling off to the next VC or PE firm, and then what happens to our contracts? We get locked into long-term contracts. We get locked into price increases, right? And all that happens is our intellectual property as lenders winds up increasing their valuation. And now we have these systems glued in. It's hard to rip them out, and that's where we get penalized. And I just think we've seen that time and time again with our industry vendors.
Man, there's a lot in there. There's a lot that you just said that we have to double click on here. It gets me thinking about this will never happen, but imagine with that influx of people trying to penetrate this market, having some kind of a entry point where you've got to get past some kind of a committee of people that the industry trusts so that they can even get to the place where they can knock on our doors. I don't know if anything like that could ever happen, but you're absolutely right. And I think if there ever is a moment that calls for that extra layer of, to penetration. See, there's that noise. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
Yes, I told him as we were getting on here, shut everything down. I don't want to hear any noises. And I told him that, and he did it, by the way, that at least 90% of the people that claim they're going to avoid all noises during the interview cannot avoid it. What was that?
There's always a ding. That was actually not an Outlook notice. It was some other system.
Well, it's impossible to turn off dings, especially when you're as important as you are. I mean, you're all over the place. But what do you think of that idea? Is that outlandish?
Well, I think there's some level of that in place right now, right? A lot of these startups are going through MISMO to understand the industry. We have some new framework products coming out through MISMO. We'll talk a little bit more about MISMO later. There's always MBA that, go become an MBA affiliate member and enter into your first conferences and do your sponsorships. And, it's great, but that's also, I don't want to say a shakedown, but let's call it what it is. A lot of these vendors think, if I just go sponsor an event, if I go to my first conference, I'm going to be introduced to executives like you or me, and now the business is just going to fall out of the sky. And I just don't think that's reality in the mortgage industry. The executive circles in the mortgage industry are about relationship and long-standing relationships. Think about when you make a purchasing decision for NFM, or I make a purchasing decision for Absolute. It's about somebody that I've seen not once, not twice, 15 times, had multiple conversations. I build that trust, and then that's what gets their foot in the door at this company. And that's just the foot in the door to get that, initial conversation. And the other part that's really hard is, who do you want to do business with, Greg? The top 250 independent mortgage bankers and depositories is where, for SaaS, that's where the revenue is. It's the small minority of companies that are the gold vein in this industry for SaaS companies to really get off their feet. And penetrating those companies is hard. You have to be in the right rooms.
No question. And relationships are at the root. Yet no one seems to tell those people from the outside that walk into this industry. So they all make the same mistakes. I will say that there's a body of folks out there in the industry that are at the executive level that are out on social media a lot, that can help bridge that gap and build those bridges. And I'm actually living it right now because I've had multiple tech companies approach me. How do I get in? What do I do? How do I find my voice? So I think that people like me and like you and others that have a microphone and a platform should help to accelerate that process. Otherwise, there's a lot of noise, and it creates a lot of friction at a time where we all have to have our eye on the ball. Having said that, to your point, and to my point about this idea, there's no system, or there's no objects in the way of any tech vendor from getting in and trying to sell the next best thing. And so what is your advice to lenders? I mean, you're obviously throwing caution to the wind. Should lenders make a hard and fast rule that unless the tech company has some kind of mortgage experience, they're really going to have to blow you away? Or do you think it's possible that someone completely from the outside coming in with new tech can make inroads? I don't even know if there are any examples of folks doing that. I know that a lot have tried.
Well, it's a complex question. I'm not going to stem innovation and say that this industry is blocked off from new vendors. We need innovation. We need people to come in. We need them to challenge the status quo. That is irrefutable, right? What I will say is it comes down to a lender's governance. And this is where it gets really complex. It used to be just vendor management, right? Do they have the necessary controls? Do they have a SOC 2? Now, the minute that word AI comes into it, it's a whole other level of controls that lenders need to be worried about. It's not just a standard InfoSec security review anymore. It comes down to their foundation models, the architecture, right? What levels of consumer data that they're touching. So I think the biggest firewall in a lend or a vendor startup getting into a lender is how good is your information security? How good is your paperwork, your architecture? How well do you know it? And also, from what I've seen, a lot of lenders don't want to be client 1. They don't want to be client 7. They're okay with being client 45. So getting that first group of people to believe in the product and getting it tested, because it's very easy to get a product, especially a fintech product, 70, 80% of the way there. The last 20% in this industry is edge case, and that is extremely hard.
Well, you're not just speaking from someone observing. You're actually in the trenches as the founder of Big Point of Sale. That is a tech platform. First of all, tell everyone what it is, and how many clients do you have? How many people are on the system?
Sure. So Big Point of Sale is a point of sale system. It's a front end point of sale system that sits on top of Encompass. It is solely for the Encompass by ICE Mortgage Technology LOS system. It was designed because we saw a need in the market. We saw that some of the legacy platforms out there weren't innovating as fast. We were having contract issues with them. The IP issue of that, we have an idea. We bring it to our vendor. They charge us to build the idea. And then all that we get back was an increased price and a further locked in contract, becoming stickier. So what my concept was there's this thing of build versus buy in the industry. Do I build it or do I buy it? Well, is there a third lane? Can we put a group of lenders together and crowdfund innovation, crowdfund our development budgets, come together, not go take VC capital, privately fund it, so we remain in the driver's seat, and now we're at the ownership level of the fintech solution. And what it wound up turning into was a price control product, where we said we're going to keep pricing really, really low, about 50% of the average cost of the other systems in the market. We're going to do it on month-to-month contracts. And that was the most interesting part about what came out of the product, was now when our name gets brought up to other vendors, we start seeing contracts getting renegotiated, where even if we don't win the deal, we lose the account, the lender gets a better negotiation with their current vendor.
Oh, and you probably have read my posts before about seat minimums and long-term contracts. Those need to go in the garbage can. That should not be how it is. So I like that even before I probably ever made a post like that, you were living it. So you understand that you have to continue to drive value every single month. Otherwise, you put lenders in basically what amounts to prison sentences. So, all right, so you've painted this picture of crowdfunding and 50% less than what the industry puts out currently in terms of cost. Did that come to fruition? Is it a sort of a co-op? Do you have other lenders and people in the mortgage environment that are constantly refining Big Point of Sale?
Yeah, absolutely. The company has about 45 lenders, the majority of which are from the top 50, or I'm sorry, top 250.
Do you want to drop a couple in there we might know?
Yeah, we have Churchill Mortgage, my own company, Absolute Home Mortgage, First Option, Central Bank and Trust, Texana Bank, Michigan First.
Got it. A lot of big names. A lot of big names for sure. Thanks for doing that.
And what we see is it winds up being that we're in control of the roadmap, because the industry pivots so fast. What we thought we needed to develop 6 months ago is completely different than what the clients are saying we need to develop today. And not having to answer to anybody about, hey, you really need to increase your price. We have, a private equity group that's behind us, let's say, and they're saying you're not doing your contract fee increases. We're like Arizona iced tea. That 99 cents bottle has never changed for 30 years. Since our alpha product release, we've never changed the price point once on the customers.
Got it. Are you integrating AI? You must be looking at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Matt, you're the CEO of Absolute Home Mortgage, founder. We just talked about Big Point of Sale, Mortgage Automation Technologies. You're also the CEO. Is that the umbrella of which Big Point of Sale rolls up under?
Correct. Okay, yeah.
Got it. You're also involved with the MBA. At one time, I don't know if you're still, but you were the president of the New Jersey Mortgage Bankers Association. That time is up, right? Or are you still?
Yeah, I timed out. I did my 4 years. Now Gabe Gillen's president.
Yeah. So you do a lot of things. Gosh, I'm going to ask you a tough question. Where do you have the most fun?
Ooh, that is a good question. Definitely in the fintech company. The fintech company is where I get to innovate, where I get to challenge myself the most.
Where's the hardest work?
Hardest work is probably industry advocacy. That's the kind of the thankless work that needs to be done. It doesn't come with a paycheck. It is very, very complex. It takes a really large investment that you need to make personally, not only in time, but going to different events, putting the work in. And it's not easy. You're sitting at some big tables with some really big boy decisions that need to be made.
When did you know you wanted to do that?
Honestly, from day one. I got in the industry at 17. I was a loan officer when I was in high school. And within probably 18 months of being in the industry, I went to my first mortgage banking conference. And this was back in 2003. So I needed to go learn the broker products back then. I was a loan officer, and I went to New Jersey MBA's Atlantic City conference, and I saw the first exposure to the industry, and I immediately said, I want to get involved in this. And that was my early beginnings of getting into advocacy, was just on a local level. And I wound up always being involved because I always had a big opinion. I was always a compliance kind of geek and understood the regulation. I was really interested in it.
How do you deal with people like me? People that are, taking shots that, are critical of some things at the, government level, sometimes at the trade group level. You've always been nice to me. Like, we've always had a very good relationship, although I'm sure that you've seen some things where you've said, gosh, that's not right. Or, we're in complete disagreement.
Well, one, I think that disagreements are healthy. I think there always needs to be a counter voice. Nobody can ever be 100% aligned. So how I deal with the outspoken individuals is, I think the best thing is to listen what they're saying, and saying that there's an opposing point, because that's what really helps you from a policy position. Try to find a middle ground, because guess what? Washington will never be aligned. There's always going to be a counterparty or an opposing voice on any policy position. So as much as we need the 65% to be united on a voice, you need these counter arguments so you can keep yourself in check.
No, you're actually pretty active on social media yourself.
Try to be.
Don't you think? What kind of commitment do you make to being out there posting?
I'll go on and go off. It really depends if I have time. I try to use LinkedIn more as a soundboard than anything else, right? I want to use it to point out the obvious. I tend to have, I guess I would say, a little bit of an advantage that I don't have to really answer to anybody. I don't have to be as polished in some of my opinions when it comes to vendors. And maybe not everybody likes, me calling out the obvious, but doing things like calling out the contract model, calling out this vibe coding. I think it's important, because what my initiative is with LinkedIn and the outreach is not only to just say, hey, this is my clean stuff, this is the industry advocacy and policy stuff, but also keep the vendors in check to say, listen, the lenders are the clients. We are your clients. Don't mess with us too much, because if you push us over a certain level, we will respond. And we respond will actually be at a bigger competitive advantage. And that was the whole concept behind mortgage automation technologies, was not necessarily an anti-vendor product, but a product to say, you know what, if you keep doing this and you keep abusing your clients, this is the result of it. So be careful.
Yeah. One of the things that the MBA has tried to tackle, and we're all looking at it every single day, is the cost to produce. What does it cost to produce a mortgage? And depending on who you are or what side of the aisle you're on, people point to different things. Manufacturing costs, certainly there, compliance. But when I look at the pie, I look at LO comp, and I see that most companies are still trying to pay their guys and gals around 125 basis points. You would think that with technology and with ease of process, that number could come down, and that can eat at a lot of that cost. What are your opinions on what the drivers can be to getting the mortgage industry to a place where that $12,000 number can be cut in half? Will it ever happen?
Sure. So I think it's important that we separate two things: cost to originate and cost to acquire. Right now, for the vast majority of the companies, they're loading in originator comp in cost to originate. And that's how we get to this $11,000 plus number. And then we're looking at it, we're saying, well, agentic AI can possibly replace the loan officer. And it might even take a better application and create a better customer process and a more consistent process for mortgage companies. And I don't disagree with that point. But I think what we're going to find out in the future is that MLO comp is not going to go down. Because as we move it out of the cost to originate bucket, we're going to very easily put it in the cost to acquire bucket. And yes, even if it gets down to the point that our loan officer only has to send an online application link out and everything else is done for them, lenders like me and you that compete in the market, we're going to say, well, how much are we willing to pay for that person to go route a consumer into that lead, right? Into that funnel to automate that process. And we'll be back right at where we started, which is who's willing to pay the most for cost to acquire that referral. We can go put billboards up and do social media advertising, but what we'll find is we're just going to be back at square one where it's easiest to hire these relationship managers.
Maybe, but what if all of those people that control the referrals are working for Rocket, working for companies that have, captured lenders in there? Does that concern you at all?
Well, what I do have faith in one thing. I've worked with real estate agents my entire career. And remember, I'm from New Jersey. And real estate agents love the I got a guy culture. The amount of agents that I've seen over the years that have in-house mortgage companies that do everything in their power to not send the lead to their broker's guy or what they're being told to do. And when I look at consumers, I'll tell you one thing. I was dead wrong about something. I thought that the NAR lawsuit was going to be the biggest disruptive factor that we've ever seen in real estate. And I was very outspoken about it. I just did not see consumers signing contracts for 2.5% buyer agency comp out of their pocket. And it wound up being a nothing burger. We don't even hear about it anymore. And what that
commissions are even up in some instances.
Correct. It taught me one thing. The home buying process is an emotionally driven process. The consumer's emotion about buying a house controls all. And that's what's protecting agent compensation.
Yet massive bets continue to be made. And the one piece of data that we don't have in that analysis, Matt, is Gen Z, Gen Alpha behind it. We just don't know how digital natives are going to behave. We know that they do a lot of buying online. And that's the bet. Isn't that the bet that they're making? It's not for boomers like me. It's not for millennials like you.
I think you're Gen X. You might not be a boomer.
I don't know what I am. I know I'm feeling old. Every day it takes me at least 30 minutes to get out of bed and stretch to a spot where I can actually walk without a limp. That's called old age, buddy. But in all seriousness, we don't have that data yet. That's the bet that I believe is being made. Otherwise, why would so much money be pouring into this idea of a flywheel, to having the entire process vertically integrated, cradle to grave?
Well, I think that right now in today's market, we have such an interesting market because of the demographics that are in it. We have boomers, we have Gen X, we have millennials, we have Gen Z. And each one of them likes to interact differently. And that's where I go about choice. Our platforms right now have to be designed that if a boomer wants to come in office for a meeting, that's available to them. If a Gen X wants a phone conversation, it's available. If a millennial wants a simple form point of sale application, that's available. And if a Gen Z wants a fully AI agentic automated process, these landing pages and what happens with point of sale, all options are available to meet these consumers. But it's interesting that you said about Gen Z, because when we focus on Gen Z, I see two very interesting things happening. One, it's the first generation in history that's less intelligent than the generation that came before it. And that's not my statistic. That's where we're seeing that be reported. Us giving them iPhones at 10 years old has really, really polluted their brains. And they just don't have the association of a pencil and a cassette tape that a millennial does, of living through analog and the digital transition. They rely on these devices. But I've also seen something else, Greg, that they're booing AI, that at these graduation ceremonies that we're seeing at a college right now, when AI comes out, they start rejecting it and they're booing it in the crowd because they're seeing it as a threat. That's a trend that we should notice, that maybe, just maybe, there will be a rejection of this at some point.
Well, there's a lot of fear there. but that's a lot of the headlines. Didn't Dario, Anthropic's founder, it's Dario, he is their founder, right? I mean, didn't he come out and say that half the jobs will be eliminated at some point? So, I mean, that's the kind of fear mongering. I mean, Sam Altman from OpenAI, and he came out and said a similar thing and then walked it back. A lot of these companies have, because it's stoking these flames of fear, which is extremely dangerous. Look, I have two kids, 14 and 16. I can't get them off their phones. Right. Even when I block them, even when I go on to family sharing, they've got a way to make their adjustments and to curtail my ability to shut them off or limit their access. They can change the date and time. You know, the other day I walk up to my kid, I'm like, why does your computer say it's 2032? He's like, oh, that's military time, Dad. I just do that to avoid you being able to lock me. And I'm like, where does this end?
Gen Z is interesting. What will be even more interesting is Gen Alpha. Will there be a movement back to analog? I was talking to Bob Hart the other day from ICE, and we were having a great conversation over breakfast. And he was talking about his daughter. He said, Matt, my daughter is so interested in cassette tapes and anything analog right now. She's 12 years old, right? And he's like, I'm starting to see a movement back towards that, which is really interesting, that they're interested in the manual processes and the non-screen time. So we can divest into every aspect of, you know, what forecast is going to happen. But I think what's important for lenders today in the market is to understand that it's not one path. We need consumer choice.
What's it like to have breakfast with Bob Hart?
I was at ICE headquarters. It was awesome. You know, we got a little tour of the facility. You know, I think Bob, it was absolutely the right choice for the job. He's one of us. It was born and bred mortgage, and I'm really excited to see what's going to happen under his tenure with ICE Mortgage Technology, because he is at heart a product guy.
Yeah, well, so what's going to happen with ICE?
ICE or ICE MT?
What's going to happen with Encompass and all of the other different tentacles they have around the mortgage industry? Because there are a lot of people trying to take that market share. Vesta is one of them, and there are many others that are going to be coming behind it. We talk about seat minimums.
Sure.
I mean, ICE is famous for that. So, I mean, I know Bob's your friend, but you know how, you know, and you also have your own technology.
Sure.
So unpack that.
So I look at this very simply. Change management is hard, almost impossible. We change a button inside of our system and loan officers just go haywire. It is difficult. And ICE is the incumbent, and they know that. And I think that they've solidified a great place in the market. And I also think that they're getting challenged, and they need to be challenged by new entrants in the market. Mike at Vesta is doing really, really great things. But when I put my CEO of a lender hat on, I have to be very careful with this. The question is, why would I want to make an LOS change? Maybe I don't like the way I feel by my vendor. Maybe I think the technology is slow. Maybe I think that they're not innovating fast enough. Whatever, maybe I think the price is too high. And I'm not saying this personally that I think these things. I'm saying that what is the lane of why I want to make a change?
Maybe the one thing you didn't mention is maybe I don't want all of these different legs of the journey in one basket.
Sure. Absolutely. Or maybe it is easier to have them in one basket because gluing together a tech stack is 10 times harder.
That too. I can relate to that. Yeah,
right?
I get that. Yeah.
So once I decide as the CEO, okay, why do I want to visit a change? Now I have to do a risk weighting. How much time is it going to take me? And what does changing my ecosphere actually feel like? My neural net that I have to go retrain every employee. If I'm running a 50-person IMB, sure, it's not that bad. But running an 800-person enterprise organization and doing that change management, you have to assume that I'm going to lose salespeople along the way because they just get frustrated. And what does that actually cost me? And that's going to be the hardest thing that the new entrants in the market are going to face, is the phased approach of change management.
Well, and to your other point, you don't want to be first in. You don't want to be 10th in. You want to be 45th in, I think was the number that you used.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you and I, we were at that incredible roundtable that Steve Grossman holds semi-annually. It's just so amazing, that room that he puts together. But in there, we had Vesta and AFN announcing essentially that AFN was going to be moving over to the platform, and they were going to be one of the first. Yeah, so that's I mean, you hope that if you're going to be, it's not a guinea pig, obviously, that's not a good term, but you're going to be one of the first, whatever you want to call it, that there are concessions, that you are paying less to get in there, that you do have a seat at the table to help them adjust when those things come up. And that's the other side of it. The price you pay, though, is LOs can be finicky, and they are the engine under the hood that powers all of us. So
and that's what scares me
that's where you got to be careful.
And what scares me is a press release. I think about this stuff as a lender saying, the minute a press release for an M&A goes out, those loan officers' phones get blown up by recruiters. Well, is this going to happen in not necessarily tech M&A, but tech announcements? The minute my company announces that we're making a technology move, is every recruiter going to go out there and call my loan officer and be like, this is going to be a nightmare. Your world is going to change. We're on Encompass. Just come to us because nothing's going to change for you.
Yeah. Another thing that you said recently, in going back and forth with some show notes, you said in the next 3 to 5 years, most AI mortgage startups won't survive.
Yeah, I believe that. I don't think it's just AI startups. I think it's every type of startup. 95% of fintech startups fail. That's just the math behind it. There's certain milestones that you need to overcome. You need to overcome your first $3 million in annual recurring revenue. You need to overcome your first 25, not prospects, not signings, 25 fully implemented enterprise mortgage companies that have adopted the product and actually stayed on the product. Once those two milestones have occurred, now you're in a level of stability where your likelihood of survival goes up by 1,000%. But getting through those first two is the hardest part, and that's where the majority fail. And the majority will fail because the capital runs out.
Yeah, well, it is interesting how archaic some of these companies coming in are. I mean, they're on the cutting edge of the blade with their tech, but how they go about trying to get companies to take a look at it is very old school. And I think that there needs to be a leveling up, as we spoke about earlier, and they need to use people that are out there with their voices on social media, who have connections at the executive level. They need to get into the right rooms. They need to show up at conferences. They need to be fun and likable, right? And that's a major thing that they just don't realize. They think that even if you have the best tech, if you're not good at connecting with people on a real human, personal level, then that's what makes our business special, right?
Yeah, 100%. And
yeah,
more than anything, you need the product that actually works, because you can have all of that, and then that gets you your foot in the door. And then if the product isn't bulletproof, then you're going to have problems. And what I would say is this industry is full of edge cases. We've done a great job crossing these milestones at big point of sale, but it has been hard because every single mortgage company has a different opinion. Everyone needs you to fork your code and get it to fit into their box. They're less willing for them to change their processes internally to make a software work. And they're more, what they really want is a software to adapt to their individual needs. And that is expensive from a development standpoint. That every client you onboard, you have to make these tweaks to your code, your tweaks to your product to get that client fully implemented. It's painful.
Is this the most dangerous time because of the AI component that the mortgage industry has had in some time, maybe ever? Dangerous from the standpoint of a lender and data privacy and things like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I really want to pursue this idea of a governing body. I mean, you look at what it takes to make a change at Fannie and Freddie. Some require congressional approval. Think about all the vendors that are lining up making these promises in the mortgage space. Why shouldn't they have to go through some kind of a vetting process by the MBA or some kind of a body that we have out there to say, okay, they're safe. They've got the right measures in place. They have the right IT, the right security. Their product works. Okay, now the market can sign you up. Does that sound interesting at all to you?
Well, I think it's a great concept, but let me put my MBA hat on
poke some holes in it. Yeah,
for a second. In essence, those already exist. And it exists through the lender. So would the government be motivated for this? Well, the government looks at it and says, well, Why are we going to regulate a vendor when we already have a regulated entity as the lender that's on the hook for it? Michigan, the state of Michigan is a great example here. On January 16th of this year, they released an AI bulletin, and it said any act of a vendor's AI that you use is an act of your own, and you are responsible as the lender for it to meet state and federal applicable laws. They put the IIS back on the lender. Fannie and Freddie.
Yeah, I'm not talking about from a government standpoint. What if there was some kind of and I'm literally flying by the seat of my pants. I had never thought of this until we started talking and I started listening to what you were saying. What if the NBA had some kind of a stamp of approval?
Yeah. Well, I think that's what MISMO is there for. And what you're saying is exactly what Brian V came in to do and is working on at MISMO right now, is a certification, and we call it FRAME, which is a framework for AI governance that a lender can follow. And MISMO coming up with a third-party certification that we can go and vet these vendors and say, yeah, do they actually meet certain controls and standards?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Brian about that. I had him and Dan Sugg on, and we did unpack Frame, not last week, but I think the week before. It was such a great conversation, and he's done an amazing job there. And he, by the way, he's a perfect example of somebody with influence and a voice who has helped to put MISMO even more on the map than they already were. Yeah. They had half the amount of members when he joined than they do now. And it's not because of just Brian. There's obviously amazing people doing incredible work, but visibility matters.
It does.
And, I'm really proud of him. He's done a great job, but thank you for giving me that tip. I'm going to go to Brian and talk to him about some kind of an organization around taking what he's doing and amplifying the structure so everybody understands. So I appreciate that. In our last couple of minutes, Matt, this has been a great conversation. How did we wait so long for this? What should be keeping lenders up at night that we've not already discussed?
Fear of adoption and change. The more you reject it, the more you get left behind. But also not just jumping in the deep end, right? You have to adopt AI, adopt technology in a responsible manner. Maybe it's bringing in third-party consultants that really know this stuff. Maybe it's hiring additional staff that on your IT team that generally understands not the capability of but the risk. I point back to a line in Jurassic Park, as corny as this is. Jeff Goldblum's line: just because you could do it, did you ever stop and think you should? I think that's a line that should resonate with every lender. It's not about what we can do. It's about what should we be doing? Where are our risks? Do we have proper governance, controls, policies, and security framework that in our effort to automate and save cost, we didn't open up further liability?
You've not stumbled once in this entire 40-minute conversation. You're so articulate. I really appreciate you being with us today. You've got so much on your plate, and can't thank you enough. CEO of Absolute Home Mortgage, CEO of Mortgage Automation Technologies. I'm trying to read without my glasses on, by the way. That's why I'm struggling. Founder of Big Point of Sale, consumer advocate, Matt Van Fossen. We're going to have to do this again soon.
You got it, brother.
All right. Stick around. Appreciate it. Have a great Monday, everybody. Enjoy. Thanks. See you on the next one.